All right, bang. Today is Thursday. It is October 30th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Joined by Chief in studio here. We are also joined on Zoom by Jeff Nadu. Massive story came out last week. Chauncey Billups arrested, Terry Rozier, amongst some other names, all caught up in that gambling scheme. And obviously, the part that I find most interesting is how tied to the mob it was. And gambling and mob is kind of right up your alley, Jeff. So seemed like a no-brainer. Thanks for jumping on, and I'm excited to get into all this.
See you guys. Been a while. Always like doing dog walks with you guys. There was always some always good responses from it. But yeah, I think Eddie, that's the thing about this case that I think is very enticing to most people is, the mob's involvement in this is actually quite limited, to be very honest.
Oh,
And I'll
really?
explain. Yeah, and I'll explain kind of how and why they're involved. I don't. I'm going to tell you right now. I would bet a good amount of money that Chauncey Billups has never spoken to a mobster, knows no mobsters. The only mob he knows is probably the one he's seen in a film or something. I think when you understand the scope of this case, how big these games are, these pervasive they are in America, there are hundreds of games, and the ones in New York are controlled by the mob. That's went on for years. But I think the mob's involvement is quite small in this. Like I don't think they were involved in the schemes to get information from players and things like that. In fact, the indictment, as far as that indictment, the sports betting one, there is no mention of the mob. The mob is not referenced in it. This was just gamblers that knew the right people, that got the right info.
Before we get going here, I want to talk about game time. The NFL is back. Tailgates, pack stands, the buzz before kickoff. But getting in is a nightmare. Queues, price jumps. Getting logged out mid-click, all you want to do is be there, beer in hand, losing your voice with the crowd. The Game Time app gives you the advantage back to the fans. It's a hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps. It's incredibly easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on the time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. I'm seeing $287 to get into Bears Giants right now. Listen, solid. We will be there tailgating at least.
We
Might go to
sure
the
will.
game. If we go to the game, we're definitely using Game Time because it's the best.
Mm-hmm.
So hop in on that action. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Also, Stella Blue Coffee's new canned lattes are here. They're crafted with 100% Colombian coffee. Each can delivers 190 milligrams of natural caffeine, and it's a good source of protein. And it comes in two smooth flavors, Espresso Cafe Mocha and Espresso Sweet Cream. Whether you're braving your morning commute or chasing your pup, Stella Blue cans are for those who are always on the go and are for those who care. Stella Blue is more than just great coffee. It's about giving back. Big Cat named the brand after his rescue dog, Stella, who inspired our mission to help more dogs find their forever homes. Every purchase helps support an animal rescue organization. So when you drink Stella Blue, you're not just fueling your day, you're saving a dog's life. Try the new cans today, taste the difference, and make a difference. All new Stella Blue Coffee canned lattes, now available at StellaBlueCoffee.com. And it should be noted that there are two very different cases going on right now. There's what's going on with Chauncey Billups. And is Damon Jones on that one too, or is he more on the Rozier side?
So Chauncey, this is kind of weird because in the poker indictment, Chauncey and Damon are named. Okay. In the other indictment involving Rozier and Damon Jones, Billups is not named as a defendant, but he's listed as co-conspirator 8. So it's largely assumed that it's him because it's his description. But what's interesting about Eddie, this case is all of these people, as far as the poker people and the sports people, they all kind of know each other. So like you'll see some of the same names in both indictments. And those are people that are what I was told are pretty much hustlers. They're involved in poker. They're in sports betting. They know all the right people. And I think just people knew the right people. People got the right information, and they ran with it. So it's two separate indictments, but there's a lot of interplay between a lot of the same people.
Are you all caught up on the separation of what's going on?
Okay. You have like the Terry Rozier effectively. I mean, I wouldn't go so far, at least from my knowledge.
And we don't like. I'm not.
Alleged.
I don't know the whole alleged.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Alleged. But that's more of like a prop, point shaving, tip off sort of situation, is my understanding with Terry Rozier.
Also, like,
is that accurate?
Yeah, and to go off of what Chief's saying, like I think you're talking about one and then talking about the other is kind of a good way to do it. And Rozier, I mean, what's interesting about the three defendants, at least that we know about in this, it all kind of connects back to Jonte Porter, because a lot of the strange bedfellows that were involved with him, they've popped up in both of these indictments too. So they all kind of go hand in hand. So for instance, Rozier knew a person, De Niro Laster, who was a friend of his. They went to the same like two high schools. They're like 5 miles apart in Cleveland. And from what all I gathered, they were friends. Laster had gotten information allegedly from Mr. Rozier that in that particular game he was going to go out early. Laster then knew these sports betting handicapper tout type people, like this guy Marvis Fairley, a couple of others. They then took the info and went to legal sports books. And what's crazy, guys, is you talk to any big gambler, you talk to any sharp, any person that's in this like consistently, it's hard to get more than $4,000 or $5,000 down on a prop. Yeah. They were getting a lot of money down on props. So it would signal that maybe they had runners that were putting this stuff in, but they were the ones that it all kind of exited to, and they were able to make money. And in turn, some of these defendants were then paid back. Like Damon Jones talks about, so he gives information to a guy who gives it to this Marvis Fairley, and he texts in a message like essentially, make sure you bet enough so I can make money too. And they then send him money through Zelle. So it's like, it's all very kind of.
That was in the indictment about Damon Jones?
Yeah, Damon Jones says something along the lines of like, make sure you bet enough so D Jones can eat as well, exclamation point. He then at one point like asked them to front him in advance that he needs money. And I think that's one thing I've learned about like particular Damon Jones and Billups. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and they all told me that these guys have played in poker games and stuff for years. They're all like pretty dug in. Rozier, I don't know that I found any connection that he's played in these games or is a big gambler even. I think maybe he just gave some info to a friend and that friend took it and ran with it. Rozier doesn't make a lot of sense because he makes so much money, and I don't know that there's a particular strong gambling connection to him as far as he's, addicted to gambling or is a problem gambler. There's evidence with Damon Jones in particular that I know, just in that way he texts, like he needs liquid cash quick. That would signal to me that and I know that he plays in these games.
Yeah, and I think I found that interesting too. That Terry is, based on what was being reported, it kind of seems like he might have more of a leg to stand on. Would you agree with that?
I definitely do, and I think this is why, like at times, like when we deal with like high net worth people, particularly like Terry Rozier, he makes a ton of money. This could have been a situation where like this guy was busting his balls, like to give him some money or something, and he's like, "Look, just bet that I'm going to go out of this game because I'm not feeling great or something." I don't know. It doesn't seem like he to me is a problem gambler. The reason I bring gambling up is because when you look into Jonte Porter, there's a lot of talk in that indictment that Jonte Porter owed for poker games that he played in. And I think basically what they said to him is, look, if you can't pay, just do this for us. No one will find out. Go out of a game early, or, don't grab a rebound at the end of a game. I think it was all pretty simple. And if you don't think this is still going on in college and things like that, I've talked to a couple of people that have told me, and if you look into some of the investigations last year and do Temple University, NCAA, New Orleans, there have been all sorts of gambling investigations as far as spreads. There's been a lot of questionable spread movements and big money coming in on games. These investigations have been going on, and there's, I think, groups of people around this country that are doing this still probably.
Do you think so? The big fear is that you would have guys in crazy debt from poker, and then they do.
I think that's definitely true because I mean, in the Porter case, that was discussed. Mm-hmm. If you talk to people in the poker community, I think it's pretty widely known. Damon Jones has played in games for years, and Billups, I have it on good authority, played. I mean, he was playing in 2019 in games. He's in that poker indictment, so it's pretty clear that they all like to gamble.
Yeah, but I think I was asking if there is the reason that this is such a huge story, because if it's like a poker game, it's a poker game. But the fear is that it bleeds into like an IOU. I'll get you on some sports betting action. Is that
I think that's the only reason they would do it, probably.
Right.
I mean, it would be, it'd be pretty insane to do this for just because you want to scam people, I guess. That's possible. But my thought is it has to do more with maybe the other indictment that maybe they owed some money. And think about this. Like, you hear people say, like, oh, Billups makes $5-6 million a year, whatever it is. Yeah, but remember, I mean, he's only getting half, and then he's got to pay all of his bills and his life. He's got kids, a wife.
Mm-hmm.
And when you you guys, I mean, we all gamble. When you were a kid, coming up, 19, 20, 25, you were betting a certain amount. You may bet significantly more now. You're making more money.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I bet more than I bet 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's the same with rich people. If at one point they're betting 20 grand a game, well, now they're betting 50 grand a game.
Yeah.
And when you are playing in these games, these poker games, like, they're not nickel and dime with your friends. These are 100, 200 games. These are big games. They're PLO games too, which is significantly more action based than like
what's a PLO game? I don't know that phrase.
The PLO is Pot Limit Omaha. It's 4 cards as opposed to 2 cards.
Okay.
And it's the same 5 community cards, but you can use all 4 cards in random combinations to make your hand. So what we find is in a PLO game, I mean, in those kind of games, the action's pretty insane. You got to sit down in a game like that with tens of thousands of dollars to feel whole,
I think the far more interesting part to me, like I kind of said earlier, is the card game aspect. I mean, we're talking about X-ray machines. Yeah. We're talking about marked cards. We're talking about contact lenses. People being, what do they call it? The jack or something like that.
There's like different face cards and like, I think when I discuss, like, you mentioned the mob, like, I want to first make clear, since the 50s, 60s, if you had a poker game in, for instance, Manhattan, which is where both of these games in the indictment were based, if you were in a seedy business, even today, strip clubs, poker games, maybe you are running a sports book down there, you are paying money to, in some way, the Gambino, Genovese crime families. You may not ever see them at these games, but know at the end of the night, when the rake is collected and all the money's counted, there's going to be a person from one of those families that takes an envelope from these games. And that's, I think, the most important thing to understand. Like, they weren't involved in the games in Miami or Vegas or anything like that. This is business as usual for the mob in overseeing these games. Now, what makes them also involved in this is they did certain mob type things to either intimidate someone or something like that. There's a part of this poker indictment where one of the organizers, Amara Wadi, he's involved with one of these games. The mob and everybody decides they're going to consolidate the games and do just one game. He then says, well, fuck that. I want to keep doing my game, and I'm going to do my game at the same time you're doing yours. And what happens in the indictment is mob guys storm this place, give him a beating, and then they're instructed not to deal with him anymore. So that's where some of the mob stuff is involved here. But like I said, Chauncey Billups, he's never played in those games. He wasn't listed as playing in those games, but it all kind of is cool to mention because it's a clickbait headline world.
Yeah. So I guess that's like another thing that's sort of fascinating to me, because I remember like John Gotti being on trial in the 90s. And it feels like there isn't like a big figurehead mob guy anymore. And it's like, they used to be kind of quasi celebrities in the, going back to Capone. And it just feels like now I kind of thought the mob was like kind of almost gone. And then it's
the mob is taking the tact of, and I've used the word, they're very similar to, a dog that gets neutered. They can't do certain things anymore. And the government, the one thing the feds have done a very good job of is stamping out the mafia in America. And they've gotten them to a point where they're like a wounded animal where they're just trying to survive and do what they can, stay out of the headlines. I mean, you mentioned the mob even existing. Over the last 10 years, this might come as a surprise to you, but it is widely known in mob circles, there is a no-kill order. You can't kill people in the mob anymore. And that sounds crazy, but it's checked out. Nobody has been killed by another mobster. A mobster's never been killed by another mobster over the last 10 years. They're not doing these things anymore. They're trying to stay out of the headlines, get involved in more legit businesses. That said, there's still a seedy, small element of card games and things like that. And that's the crazy thing, guys, about these games. You don't need to rig these games. There's enough money being collected on every pot from the rake. You can make a ton of money doing it. These guys, though, are gangsters, and they're going to do anything they can to make more and more money.
Yeah.
And what's good is they had, I mean, in Greenwich Village, that's one of the trendiest places to live in New York City. There's all sorts of money around there. You think of the neighborhoods you live in, Chicago, downtown, some of those neighborhoods, there's games going on tonight there. And they want the richest people with deep pockets that want to play in these games, and they'll lose money. But they didn't need to rig them. There was enough money in them already.
So that would be another question I have. So what is, maybe this is in the indictment, maybe it's not, but what's like the estimated like annual gross on these types of card games for the mob? Are we talking like millions,
like I said,
millions of dollars?
Yeah, I mean, at like most of these games, for instance, like the Lexington Avenue game, which is referenced, it was in Midtown in New York. They were running, one game a week, sometimes two, and you're talking about every person sits down minimum, I think it was 10K minimum, and that's just at the beginning. A lot of these games you play in, whether they're legit, no scam or scam, they're getting bigger as they go on. So like when you watch a poker game on a stream, it starts pretty small, and then people start straddling and adding extra blinds and getting more and more money on the table. So I would say, I mean, the mob was making, and everybody involved, I would say tens of thousands of dollars a game, and they're doing multiple games a week per month. And remember, these are just two games. There are games in Jersey. There are games in Staten Island. There are games in Brooklyn. There are games all over the place.
So why would they do what they're being accused of? Just pure greed? That's it?
Yeah.
I mean, who the fuck's going to play in these games then?
Yeah.
Well, I think because initially they didn't know they were rigged. The guy I talked to that played in the game, he said after a while he caught on and knew the game was rigged. He went down a certain amount of money and told them, I'm not paying. I know this game's rigged. And he stopped going to that game. But you have to think, like, some of the people that are playing in these games are, I mean, super deep. Like one guy lost 1.8 mil, like that's
How
probably
did he
some
say
crypto
he knew
guy.
it was rigged?
How did my guy know?
Yeah, did he get
Because
into it?
I mean, any poker player, like what I've also found is like everybody knows everybody. So like one of the defendants in this case is known for these shuffler machines. He's been doing it all over the country for years, and he can only win in games that are rigged. And like you can tell, like when the shuffler finishes and it presents you the cards, like a lot of the time they're not cutting the decks, things like that. So like there are things that you can notice about the table, the chip trays. If you're good enough at poker, and a lot of the people that are playing or know about these games, they know right away. There was a clip that went viral. That guy Matt Berkey, he was on Pat McAfee. He talked about it. That game with Billups in 2019. He said in 2023 it was no good, the game. And these same characters pop up time and time again. That's the arcing thing about this indictment that I think is most interesting is the mob guys are less scumbags than some of the cheats in this case. Like some of these cheats in this case have been cheating, I mean, for years. Like this is what they do.
Do the mob guys? You said there's a no kill order, mob to mob, but what would they do to someone who they caught? If they're honest, if the mob is honest, like you're saying about running these games, what is the punishment for them being caught cheating?
I think to say like the mob's never honest in anything they do, and do I think they knew that these scams are going on? Of course, like yeah. I'm sure they didn't want it as prevalent and pervasive as it was, but. I actually asked that question to a guy that used to be in the life, and he said that, if we found that two people, let's say, were cheating in a game, that we would give them a beating probably.
Yeah.
And there have been beatings and stuff and, isolated incidents. But when I say like kill order, like there's been no mobster has been killed by another mobster. And we also see even like the involvement of informants on YouTube talking about the mob. Like there are people like me that are just people that talk about it. Like, that wouldn't go on in the 70s and 80s. It's just they're not as feared a group anymore, and they really kind of stay in just what they're doing. But yeah, I would say if they found out like a player was cheating, they would, number one, kick them out of the game, and maybe give him a beating.
Okay.
But what about the what wasn't there in the indictment that something with the shuffler machine guy, he got a beating at some point?
Yeah, so I mentioned one of the game organizers, this guy Amara Wadi, who by the way, which is this name, he showed up in the Jonte Porter indictment. These guys all kind of run together and they show up in different things. So Awadi had this game that he started separate of the one that was combined, and that pissed people off, and they sent someone after him. And then there was an overt act involving a Hobbs Act robbery where several suspects stole one of the shuffler machines. They didn't pay for it. They set a guy up and like robbed him of the shuffler machine. So yeah, there are some overt acts like that where like there's violence involved, but it's mostly just like heavy cheating.
Okay. Back to Terry Rozier. What do you make of the NBA saying that Terry Rozier did not violate any NBA rules?
I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, their investigation was clearly horrific. I mean, I don't understand how we could believe anything they say after, like Adam Silver should be called in front of Congress and he should have to explain why his security department didn't see any of this stuff. Look, I will say, and I don't want to be regarded as like a liberal or conservative, but I do think there is an emphasis from like every administration. They want to prosecute certain people. I do think there could be a shard of, we want to maybe get back at the NBA for some things maybe they've done in the past that we didn't like. But yeah, Silver and the NBA look real bad here because, I mean, Rozier clearly did some things that were, alleged that were pretty serious. So how they deemed that there was nothing wrong. I don't know every rule in the league, but I would venture to believe that leaving a game early to benefit bettors who you told you would leave early, I would have to think that'd be a violation of a rule.
Yeah, and then the other question I have about Rozier, or just you mentioned these other investigations, Temple, I can't remember the other ones you said. Do you think that has become more prevalent as gambling has been legalized, some of these, or is it the same as it's always been?
I think it's a lazy argument. You'll hear a lot of these old lawmakers talking about, well, this is what gambling, we shouldn't have it so pervasive. The difference in why it's better that we have legalized gambling is when you legalize something, there's something called oversight. Okay, so there's a committee of people that watch over it and say, okay, we're going to safeguard and make sure this stuff doesn't happen. Think if gambling wasn't legalized and this was all being done offshore, you would not know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost less likely to happen because now there's an oversight committee that are looking into it. There's also people that are going to talk about, well, let's ban prop bets. And it's like, well, that's not going to solve it either because the offshore market will just pick it up and start doing it or whatever. So, yeah, I think we see it because it's obviously pronounced now, but this would be going on and we wouldn't know much of anything because there's no oversight over it. So, and this went on in the 70s.
Yeah.
This went on in the 80s. This went on in the 2000s. So
I was listening to I think it was ESPN 1000. And they had someone who was on the commission, and that's probably a large way of how this whole thing got founded because if they're seeing irregularities, it's not hard to find. Like if
remember, they're betting like obscure rebound props and stuff. Yeah. Like that's you're going to see a few 100,000. Again, remember, like I said, you talk to any gambling savant that's sharp or whatever, or even just decent, you're not going to get more than $4,000 or $5,000 down on a prop. You see hundreds of thousands of some random obscure rebound prop in March. It's like you're 100% right.
Or going to different kiosks or doing it like there's very clear ways, I think.
And then Eddie, that player just happens to go out of the game 8 minutes in.
Yeah, it's
just really happenstance. And that's the thing that like I always am blown away when I read these indictments because that's what I would tell anybody. Like when you see a story like this, just go get the indictment and read it. You'll find out so much. Like it amazes me what criminals do over this. Like it's like you haven't understood that everything is tracked. The Zelle is going to be looked at. It's almost like an easy map. And that's why the feds, like this is a silver platter served up to them. And again, there are people in this indictment that have been doing this kind of stuff for years. There's one defendant here that popped up in the Jonte Porter case. He popped up in the sports betting side of this case. He popped up in the poker side of this. And guess what he was doing last night? He was on Instagram trying to sell his picks. These people, the hustle never ends. And they'll always do this kind of stuff.
And I do think it's one of those things that as time goes by, that's kind of how it gets fixed. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
because
you think we're still in like a Wild West kind of.
Totally.
Yeah.
They just didn't. I don't think people realize like, oh, they say I can't do this, but can I really not do this? And then I think you kind of fuck around, you find out, and that's
you pee whack a few guys.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. Like, listen to that guy on the radio. I learned so much. Like, do you know these guys are not even supposed to be anywhere near a sports book?
Who are the athletes?
They can't be like, if they can't even not let alone not even just being in one is not good enough. You can't be near outside of one. Then it makes it appear that you're leaving or entering.
Well, it was tough to walk to work then if you're a Cubs player.
Right, yeah. No, for sure. That was just kind of odd, but
Right.
that's the truth. That's what they said. There cannot be any like physical, representation at any of these places.
NCAA was prepared to vote next week on allowing players to wager on professional sports. And because this happened, well, they've decided to push that off a few weeks. They were going to wait. They were going to vote on that to allow NCAA players. So if you play at, Northwestern, there was a rule that was possibly going to get passed that you could go bet at whatever casinos in that area on the Bears that weekend. That's a really destructive idea, don't we think?
It's hard because on
don't
one
know.
end it has nothing to do with them, so I'm like, yeah, fine, let them.
Yeah.
But it sets up a method of how young people aren't going to just stop at betting only on the NFL. At some point you're opening up the thought of, and remember too, like a lot of the kids, notice the teams, Chief and Eddie, that I discussed that were under investigation. North Carolina A&T, New Orleans. They're these random schools. There's no NIL money at those schools.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy as some crypto sports bettor to go to one of these kids and say, look, man, I like what you do. You want to make a little money? Just miss that shot at the end of the game. No one will ever find out. It's happening. And if you don't think it's happening, I think you're crazy. And opening up the door, like, why not just say, if you were caught gambling on any sport, we can't have you involved. I think that would be a good idea.
That's the easiest way to make it black and white for sure.
I mean, at least have safeguarding. Look, if they go and do it, you can't make everyone not do things, but it would at least help.
The Roier stuff is hard though. I think that is kind of tough. Because say if you made it to the NHL and like how you feeling, like my shoulder, whatever.
Yeah.
Like. And that's all you got? You're like, I'm trying to give it a go.
Well, that's
we'll
like,
see.
like you would hear like the classic stories. I feel like they reference it in like Casino and movies like that, where it's like, the quarterback got dumped by his girlfriend, and there's always been like insider.
I think he's probably like the flimsiest as far as like the charges against him. I could absolutely see him fighting and beating. I mean, as you guys said, like it is pretty flimsy, like especially because I thought my investigation into Roier was actually pretty helpful to him. I mean, this guy he obviously knew. He probably maybe he didn't know that this guy knew these sports betting guys. And it was just a simple, hey man, like I don't think Terry's going to play tonight, or he's hobbled. Like I don't understand how Roier could be at fault for that. I think he's got probably the best case here, but the other ones is pretty bad.
Yeah, because I just don't know how you will ever stop like someone just texting their dad like, oh yeah, like I tweaked something, and then who knows, like it's like,
or even they're talking to their dad or their uncle or whatever, and it's not even themselves personally, it's just they're at practice like, oh yeah, his ankle's real tender.
Also too, remember, like there's a major emphasis on like people like Damon Jones who were obviously paid for their information, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's none of that with Roier, right? He wasn't like, they didn't like give him 20 grand for this as far as what I've read. So I think it's a lot flimsier, at least in his case. It is hard to beat the feds. It's not impossible. Some people have done it. John Gotti, who you mentioned, did it. Yeah. So it's not overly impossible, but it won't be easy.
It's also just like with Roier, like you mentioned how much money he's made. Guess Eddie, what his career earnings are, Terry Roier.
I mean, in today's NBA,
he's been in the league 10 years.
He's been in the league 10 years. I'm going to guess like 90.
160 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of dough.
It is. It's crazy.
We'll say, I think that, Chief, like, think about how much money have you earned in your career? You know, probably way more than you have, right?
Well, yeah, but let's say knock him down to 80 just for taxes, right? For your take home, even though he's played a good chunk here in Miami. But it's still like, because what was the total bet on things related to him?
I think it was several $100,000. Wasn't that much.
Right.
And I think that's, again, why he has a probably better shot in this is what would be his reason to do this? Like, it doesn't really make sense. The only sense that it would make is if he really liked to gamble and he owed a lot of money to people.
Yeah, but even though I think the other thing you learn, like you brought it up, Jeff, it's like the more you make too, your spending habits change, and like you never know. Like, it's right.
No, I know. I mean, it's also reported that Terry Rozier owes $8 million to the federal government for back income taxes. So,
and you know, but I think what the feds have shown is they've shown their hand in the indictment, and there's no legitimate like connection really to Rozier and any like nefarious people that I saw. I mean, all the other people have, like, it's pretty well known they gamble. There are people that are not in this indictment that I was surprised weren't in this indictment. Yeah. So it's maybe Rozier is a degenerate gambler. I don't know, but there's no connection to that here.
You mentioned like the political side of this.
Yeah.
How much do you think it was like Kash Patel? Because I was kind of surprised to see him as the face of this at the podium.
People are.
Yeah. So how much of that do you think it's like, I want a headline that looks like a win?
Well, I mean, you look at that administration, and it's not just their administration. This is a Republican Democrat kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, the Wire was based on dope on the table, right? How every administration wants to get that headline. And this administration has done it a lot over the last year plus. They did it with Diddy, and they failed miserably with that. They'll do it with Mangione. That is not a federal murder case. That should be a tried state case.
Yeah.
They wanted to parade him out in front of everybody. It is out of the Eastern District, too, the most headline-grabbing district in the federal system. And Kash Patel, I mean, you could tell he had no idea. He couldn't even pronounce Cosa Nostra correctly. He couldn't pronounce Lucchese or Genovese. Throw in, I mean, it is partly mostly a gambling case. I mean, I again, obviously there's some big names here, but I wonder, is this kind of an assault in the NBA just because of the kneeling stuff a couple of years ago or whatever? You know, you never know, because their big thing, this administration, has been headlines, and they want to attack stuff like drug cartels, right? So like I noticed on Friday, a day after this, they did a sweep of Kensington in Philadelphia, and they arrested the biggest corner in Philadelphia for narcotics. Like, I'm talking about the most money on the biggest block in Kensington was indicted. A 9-year investigation. Big headlines. Guess who was the front man of that? Kash Patel. So we can tell the administration and the American public that we care about drugs. Even though the flow of drugs won't stop in Kensington. We're trying here. We're trying to get corruption out of the NBA. They're trying to hit all these different points.
Yeah, the Toronto Rangers, that part was
that was a rough,
Did you see that, Chief?
No.
When they were reading at the briefing, they were reading the whole, the indictment and everything, whatever. And they listed out all the teams, and the last one, and the Toronto Rangers, and it was like, it ain't the Rangers,
like
pal.
NHL, baseball. It's
I know exactly.
It's not even the NBA. None of those teams are even in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. So that was tough. But I guess one of my final questions here is you did say at one point it's not alleged that Chauncey was at these poker games, but isn't that? I thought that's what he was being accused of. No, like
no, he definitely played in one game. It was in 2019 in the indictment. What I said is there's no known involvement that he had in the New York games. So as far as the ones that were under the auspice of mob associates or mob members, there's no known involvement of him in those games, and it wasn't in the indictment. There's a game in 2019 that's talked about. It was in Las Vegas. And it's been reported, I put it out there, and then Pablo Torre put it out there, that Kevin Garnett played in that game.
Yeah.
There were some high-profile people, and someone told me Chauncey cleaned up in the game, made a ton of money, and there's a clear indication that he was involved in cheating in that game. So that's kind of the involvement of him in poker games. Do I know that he's played in other poker games in LA and Vegas? Absolutely. I've heard stories about some of his behavior.
But if he only played in one game and Pablo Torres reporting KG played in that same game, why wasn't KG arrested?
You didn't know about cheating.
Oh, and they're saying that
Chauncey
did.
Yeah, so it's kind of in a way, if Chauncey knew the game was cheated and invited Kevin to play in it and didn't tell Kevin, now he's also a shitty friend for doing that. But I would also urge people, okay, I won't put the guy's name out there, even though I have already. There's another guy who was not named in this indictment that these guys play poker all the time. I mean, one of them was fired from ESPN for playing on a poker live stream with strippers in the background. Maybe you know who I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
Like I heard stories about, and I've learned from the poker community, like if you want, I mean, it's just amazing how pervasive cheating is and like owing people money is. And like, it's pretty wild how deep it goes with a lot of these people.
I have a very basic, stupid question here, but you always hear about card games on planes with these guys, and they play in their downtime. Obviously, like everybody here has probably played in a poker game with their friends, right?
Yeah.
Where does it switch? Is there a dollar amount where it gets
it's
like
strictly one thing? When you play with your friends, let's say you, Eddie, and a couple other people at Barstool play a game, you're not taking a rake. You're not taking money off each other. Okay. The rake is what makes a poker game illegal. So a casino does it. That's up to state standards. If you're doing it in your own house or in a rented Airbnb and you're profiting off it, it's an illegal rake and illegal gambling. Now, these guys not only were doing that, they were then also cheating the games.
Yeah.
They were provided information that the other players did not have, and they were essentially stealing from them. So that's what makes, like on the NBA plane, they're just taking each other's money.
Right.
They're not one person. Now, maybe there is one person that takes $5 off every pot. That would make that game illegal.
Okay. So, but like a hypothetical. So there's that famous movie Molly's Game, right? And she's running this high stakes kind of Hollywood game. If you're not officially taking a rake, but they are tipping you out at the end, is that like a blurred line?
I think that's kind of I would say it's a blurred line. She is profiting off of it. I don't know I think it also goes to like what she's claiming in tax revenue. So is she concealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in income through illegal poker games? There's kind of a level of different types of like gray areas, if you will. Cause like a lot of these games, like, I also want to kind of paint the picture of what they look like. These games are highly ones that you would want to play in if you liked poker, right? Most casinos are dingy for the most part. Like you're around people you don't really want to play with.
This is like a high class, high roller environment.
These games have great food. They have good security. They're in beautiful penthouse, townhouse type things. There's women that are beautiful walking around topless. Like you want to play here. And like, I think there's an excitement around playing with certain people, or maybe there's a gangster that looks like he was in Goodfellas at one. And you're just kind of known that you're going to get a rake taken. And the tip thing's also big there. So like if you tip a waitress at one of these games, is she technically breaking a law? Like she was just hired just to work, but she is getting paid tips. So there's a lot of gray area with some of the people also. Like there's a guy in this indictment that was literally a dealer. That's it. Nothing else. He didn't need, I don't think he may have not even known the game was cheated. He's involved in this. Okay. So it's kind of wild how there's some gray area, and there's a difference between a raked illegal game, a raked legal game, a raked cheated game. There's all sorts of different ones.
It's a wild little sector of.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where it's like sometimes you're like, am I even in the real world? Because
you're not.
Right.
Not really.
Like I like have no idea that these are going on. I don't know anybody that's going on. And like it's just like there's just different circles and tiers of society. And it's like, we've gotten to know a decent amount of professional athletes and, wealthy people, successful people. but it's like you just have no idea what goes on as soon as you stop hanging out. You know, like they could be off to do one of these things on a Saturday.
I'll say this, and I'll leave you with this. There are two things that I will make clear. These illegal games, raked games, have been going on for decades. The biggest of celebrities have played in them. We've also seen that even in these cheated games, there were high-level celebrities playing in them. Throw in the fact that the hustle never ends with these people. They will be doing games tonight. I'm sure there are games in Chicago tonight that are going on. There are games in New York going on. And most of the people in this case will plead out. They'll get a year or two. Chauncey obviously has bigger issues. Damon Jones has bigger issues. But most of the defendants in this case will plead. The mob guys, this is business as usual. They'll go do a year or two, a pinch, get away from their wife, and that's that. One thing I'll also say, these cases were served up on a silver platter. Feds absolutely have someone inside these indictments that has been feeding them this information. They're too complex to just stumble upon.
Yeah.
So I would imagine there'll be multiple informants that come about. And the thing for them is they will get off scot-free and keep doing this stuff. So I don't think anybody really will lose in the end.
Nadu, to switch gears here for a second, I know we're here to talk mob and gambling, but what's any latest fronts in the cartel situation? I know you're plugged in on that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, Mexico is it's really a mess right now just because this administration has definitely taken more of a frontal approach to trying to address what they want to do with this. We've seen a lot of cartel guys get extradited to America to now face charges in this country, and that's kind of been working in unison with the Mexican government. But there's also been things that have come out. I do want to address one situation where it made national news of the cartel threatened Cash Patel and the American public. That is a total bullshit story, okay? I've talked to various way higher level people than me that are in cartel journalism. I'm not really even in that. I just follow it. It is bullshit. It wouldn't surprise me if the CIA put that banner up. Cartels would never do that. They are, whether that not they want to tell you, they don't want to fuck around with the United States. And they also don't want to fuck around with everything that United States. Tourism's huge in Mexico, okay? By directly threatening them, that affects their business. They would never do that. There's also a lot going on right now in Brazil. The government is essentially stormed Rio de Janeiro, and they're at war with one of the top gangs in Rio. Ecuador is a hellscape right now. Ecuador has become one of the most dangerous countries in the world. South America is
wasn't Ecuador always known as one of the safer countries in South America?
That's the wild thing about it. 20 years ago, Quito was beautiful. A lot of Ecuador, Guayaquil, a lot of those places, but it's become a haven for really not Ecuador. There's a lot of Ecuadorian gangs, Los Lobos and groups like that, but it's become kind of a middle point so they've kind of benefited off of their geographical location, being close to Peru and Colombia. That's the only fertile area you can, cultivate cocaine, right? Mm-hmm. So what it's become is a lot of the transnational, like Ndrangheta, a lot of the European groups, Middle Eastern cartels, they've all kind of sent emissaries to Ecuador, and they're battling over the control of cocaine. And there's a lot of ports in Ecuador, Guayaquil being one of them, that they've just become super dangerous. And what it's also led to is some of the local groups, they've become mafias in a way. I saw a really horrific video the other day where it was like a seafood market, an open seafood market, and they charge extortion. A mother and her daughter didn't pay. They sent somebody in and took them out. So it's a really sad, fall of a country. I mean, a lot of those countries have just become hellscapes. Yeah, cartel world's crazy right now. A lot going on, and it's big business.
Yeah, certainly. And I want to reiterate again, a lot of chips still have to fall. No pun intended, because it's a poker story. But
yeah, all of that stuff is, and that's one thing you always want to make. I try to always make that clear. A lot of the stuff that is alleged, and the government needs to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this stuff happened. The thing is, though, when the feds come, the case is pretty much already made. They're not doing stuff like the state. The state kind of builds their case as it goes on. When the feds knock on your door, I mean, you're 95% of the time, and this is to any person that gets arrested by the feds. Number one, don't say anything to them. Number two, you're generally going to plea. They're going to come to you and say, look, man, like, you evaded taxes. We have it. We can prove it. You can fight this. We'll win, and you'll get 10 years. Or you can just admit you did it. We'll give you 23 months in prison. And most people are going to take that. I know people that have taken a plea when they absolutely didn't do the crime, but they couldn't prove they didn't do it. So they just took the plea, because you go to trial with the feds, they will make an example out of you.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you should get 10 years, they'll give you 40. You don't want to be made an example of by them.
Yeah.
So that's why they're so successful in their cases.
Yeah. So go read the indictment. Go check out some other sources of information. I'm sure shit will come out as we go. But thanks, Jeff. It was
it's good to see you, Jeff.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I hope all is well. I also want to send my condolences, man. Barstool Beef. What a sad story. Nick Mangold. Rest in peace to those guys. I never met Beef. He was a little after me, but always seemed like a real kind guy. And
he was.
I all the best to his family, man.
Yeah, he was great, man.
Yeah,
he really was. We'll miss him for sure.
Yep.
But thanks for that, and thanks for coming on, Jeff. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, always appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
That's
Jeff.
it, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. That's it for this week. We'll catch you guys on Tuesday.